Tonight, find my attacker. 6 months on from having acid thrown in her face, the teenager who feels abandoned by the police.
Everyone has just started screaming acid, acid, acid. So this has put me in a panic mode. I went into the corner shop. I ran.
Also on the programme, the alleyway killing. The woman stabbed almost 40 times by her jealous ex-boyfriend. 4 days of rail chaos, the major sporting events facing disruption this weekend, and Richard E. Grant joins us to talk love, loss and a life well lived. Good evening. It was the sort of exchange many of us have witnessed on public transport, a disagreement over noise from a phone. But within minutes, Medina Raji was screaming in pain after being splashed in the face with acid. 6 months on, the teenager is furious with the Met for what she sees as lack of action. Her many physical scars are healing, but the psychological ones remain, especially knowing her attacker is still out there. This report from Helen Keenan contains pictures of Medina's injuries.
I thought my life was over. I thought my face was finished. I thought I wasn't going to leave my house ever again.
Acid thrown in her face. She's healing, but still has scars.
So skin was peeling from here, all around my hairline here. I've lost a lot of hair around here. Because I have my edges done now, you can't really see it, but it's a lighter patch around this area. Behind my ear, it's slightly darker on my chest area here. But it's taken 6 months for it to be like this. This was on the day.
Medina had to go to hospital every day for weeks to receive treatment, where she says they told her she was hit with water mixed with a corrosive substance. And if she hadn't been wearing glasses, she could have lost her sight.
When did you first realise that it was acid that had been thrown at you?
First, I remember rolling around on the floor screaming. So I've got off the floor now. Everyone has just started screaming acid, acid, acid. So this has put me in a panic mode. I went into the corner shop. As of now, I'm not feeling no pain. I'm just in panic. As I start to go in, as I leave the corner shop that I ran into, that's when I start to feel the pain. It starts to feel like it's hot, like something is burning, eating into my skin. And it just gradually gets worse and worse and worse.
And that's when you realise?
Yeah, that's when I realised
it is acid.
Yeah.
It stemmed from an altercation with a man on a bus near Elephant and Castle about music playing out loud from a phone. Her friends say he got off the bus, followed her and targeted her. It was just 2 weeks after her 18th birthday. Medina and her mum told us the Met contacted her a week after the attack, but have heard nothing from them since.
It would have been nice if the police at least supported it. Knowing this man is still roaming around the streets, it doesn't make me feel safe. I don't feel safe for others as well.
Since that happened, I have that in my brain, and every day I take underground to work. Even though when I'm in underground, I'm always looking left and right because I have that in my brain, because I don't really know what goes wrong that day when someone could pour acid on someone on the street. So that's show how unsafe on London Street.
She's since released this video of what happened to her on TikTok to warn others. While the nightmares have stopped, the concern for her safety hasn't.
Helen, horrific injuries there. What have the police had to say then?
Well, as I mentioned in my report, her and her mum said they were contacted by the police a week after the attack, but that they hadn't heard anything since. Well, we contacted the Met to see if we could get something from them, and Medina had explained to me that she thought there was CCTV from the bus of the man she suspects carried out the attack. Well, this image has now been released of a man police want to speak to in connection with the incident. Now, in a statement, they said that tackling violence remains a priority for the Met and any new information will be assessed. They'll be making contact with the victim to explain the current status of the investigation. Now, they are, of course, appealing for anyone with information to contact them on 101. OK,
good. Your inquiries have got that image out there. Helen, thank you. The first of 4 days of disruption on the rail network began this morning. Negotiations in the long-running dispute between the unions and the companies, like the trains themselves, are going nowhere. This weekend's FA Cup final and the Epsom Derby are among the events caught up in the chaos. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has the latest.
Tattenham Corner Station. The train on platform 2 is going nowhere, which is bad news for the Derby. Tattenham Corner is one of 3 stations which serve Epsom Racecourse, but this year, thanks to strikes, there'll be no trains at all. A local golf course has been turned into a car park.
We have essentially made the car parks a lot bigger, so there's plenty of room for people to arrive by car now. We did look at additional coach shuttles, but felt with everything else that was going on in London that that wasn't a feasible option. So we focused on making the car parks as large as we possibly can.
The Derby is one of the biggest days in the sporting calendar. Over the 2 days, Ladies' Day on Friday and Derby Day itself on Saturday, an estimated 100,000 people will pour into Epsom Racecourse. But a series of rail strikes began today with a walkout by members of the drivers' union ASLEF. Most of London's big stations came to a standstill. At Paddington, the Heathrow Express was running, but many Great Western trains weren't. Working from home has taken the sting out of rail strikes, but it's not an option for all commuters.
It's taking me like over 20 minutes extra to get in today, and it's really annoying.
I left my home at 6:30 instead of maybe 7:30.
So it's affected me with my journey to hospital today.
I understand why they're striking, so I support them.
The train companies have offered drivers a 2-year pay deal with a 4% increase this year and a further 4% next year. The train companies say the pay rise will give drivers an average salary of £65,000 a year for a 4-day week. In return, they want to make Sundays part of the normal roster, abolishing the current system where drivers volunteer to work and get overtime. It's the strings attached to the pay offer which the union rejects.
We sat down with them to find a way forward to get an offer, and then we were going to put other things into a separate set of talks, and then they wanted everything included in the second year. So they wanted hundreds of % of conditions and productivity for nothing for a 20% pay cut. And they knew what our red lines were because we told them, and they deliberately put them in the deal.
Today's drivers' strike will be followed by station staff and guards on Friday, and then the drivers again on Saturday. Simon Harris, ITV News, Epsom.
A jealous ex-boyfriend who stabbed a woman to death in an alleyway has been jailed for a minimum of 29 years. Wearing a balaclava, Denis Sakpomedeyi waited for Anya Jędrzejkowiak to finish work before launching a ferocious and savage attack in Ealing last May. Today, her family called him a coward for refusing to face court. Carolyn Sim has more.
Anya Jędrzejkowiak had come to London from Wales to study and work, following her ambition to become a sound engineer. But her ex-boyfriend was so obsessive, he tracked her down and stabbed her to death in a ferocious attack. Outside Kingston Crown Court, where Denis Sakpomedeyi was jailed for life, Anya's sister said she felt robbed.
Anya just wanted to be free and just wanted to have a life, and he cut it short. And I will miss her immensely every single day. I miss her every day. And she will be always with me.
CCTV shows Sakpomedeyi wearing a black hoodie arriving at Las Iguanas restaurant in Ealing where he knew Anya worked. He'd come straight here from Victoria Coach Station on May the 15th last year. Anya wasn't on shift, so the next day he returns. This time she's seen leaving work with her friend Jack Maskell. As the pair walk back to her house together, Sakpomedeyi follows. Moments before the attack, the couple was seen approaching a deserted alleyway. It was there that he grabbed Anya, pushing her into a fence and stabbing her 40 times. Jack, who tried to help, said in court today he can never unsee what he did to her.
In delivering the sentence, the judge said Sakpomedeyi had shown no remorse over Anya's death. He addressed Jack Maskell directly, saying there was nothing he could have done to save Anya that night because Sakpomedeyi had acted so swiftly, so violently and so viciously.
After the attack, Denis Sakpomedeyi dumped his knife and rucksack in a pond at Gunnersby Park.
And he never spoke with us. He didn't put forward a defence case, and he's chosen not to come to court for the trial or for today for the sentencing. And although that's his right, I just find that incredibly disrespectful to a family that have already been through enough.
He is proper coward that he committed a crime, but he's not even able to face us. He's not able to look us into the eyes.
But he will serve a minimum term of 29 years for a barbaric attack which has left Anya's family and friends heartbroken. Carolyn Sim, ITV News.
The police are appealing for the public's help after a woman was sexually assaulted in her own home. A woman aged in her 20s told police how she had fallen asleep in her living room. She told officers she'd been woken by an unknown man who had managed to get inside. Just Stop Oil protesters have been dragged off roads by police after marching slowly in the way of traffic. Campaigners were removed from Cromwell Road on the A4 in West London, while other members of Just Stop Oil marched near West Kensington Station. Next, to a mum of 3 from Islington who's been living with a rare form of cancer. Brenda McKenzie is 58 and the cancer she has affects 1 in a million people. It's particularly hard to diagnose as the symptoms are similar to skin conditions like eczema. She needs a stem cell transplant for a chance of life, and she needs more people from black communities to join the donor register for that to happen. Anila Dami has her story.
This is a desperate plea for help. I just want a chance to be able to just live.
Brenda McKenzie wants to stay alive for herself and her 3 children. But she's been told her chance of survival depends on finding a stem cell donor, as the 58-year-old from Islington has a rare blood cancer.
How has this diagnosis affected you and your life?
It's very draining because I don't know how I'm going to be from day to day. It changes. So obviously it's a great worry for me because, my chances of survival are very slim unless I get a stem cell match.
There are 3 types of blood cancer, with 1 person diagnosed every 14 minutes in the UK. Brenda was diagnosed with cutaneous T-cell lymphoma in 2019. The cancer forms within white blood cells used to help regulate the body's immune system and fight infection. It's so rare, it only affects an average 1 in a million people. She says it's mentally draining for her and her daughters and son, 2 of which recently lost their father.
They're really, really devastated because, it's difficult for them to comprehend what the next step is and where I'm going to be in the future.
In the early stages, it can look like other more common skin conditions like eczema, which can make it difficult to diagnose. It may cause skin changes, including flat red rash-like patches, itchy, sometimes painful areas, and raised patches or lumps, mostly affecting people aged 60 and over, and more common in men than women. Brenda is on stage 4 and has undergone numerous treatments, including radiotherapy. Her future now depends on finding a donor. She's been on the register for 2 years and hasn't found a match, and is feeling the impact of the fact people from black and Asian communities are less likely to donate.
In the black community, we should have the same chances as anybody else, to have, high survival rates for getting a stem cell match, but unfortunately it's quite low. I think it's a lack of trust and obviously probably education as well. A stem cell match is my only chance of survival and a cure.
That was Brenda McKenzie speaking to our reporter Anila Dami. Well, that need for more donors to come forward from black communities is one we return to regularly on this programme. Beverly de Gale founded the African Caribbean Leukemia Trust in 1996 after her son Daniel was diagnosed with the illness. Daniel died in 2008 at the age of 21, and Beverly joins me now. Welcome to you again, Beverly.
Thank you for having me.
The point there that Brenda made at the end, a lack of trust and perhaps a lack of education, is that something you would agree with?
Yes, unfortunately it is. The ACLT was started 27 years ago because of Daniel, and there have been strides forward, but actually those strides are not enough when you consider that for a white British person that needs a stem cell transplant, they have a 72% chance of finding a matching donor. If you are black, mixed race, or from Asian backgrounds, your chances drop to 32%. And so for someone like Brenda, sadly, the odds are stacked against her, but organisations like ACLT, Anthony Nolan, DKMS, and the British Bone Marrow Registry are trying to get those numbers up. But we are faced with lots of hurdles.
You talked about strides there and hurdles. If you take a step back and think of the time since Daniel got ill, how much progress has been made?
Well, when Daniel was diagnosed, we was told that we had 1 in 250,000 chance of finding a donor for Daniel. And since the ACLT started 27 years ago, we ourselves have found over 150 donors for patients in this country and around the world. So although the numbers are not where we need them to be, donors are being found. But the sad reality is that when people like Brenda are diagnosed as needing matches, she has not found a match. She's been searching 2 years. And so the chances for us to find her donor are slim, but this is what we do. This is why the charity was set up, to stop people going through the heartache of searching for donors and losing their lives. And so we are hoping that through appeals like we are doing right now, that the community will go online and find out how they can be tested to see if they can help Brenda or anyone else like her.
Briefly, is it only appeals, or is there something more substantial that could happen? I know you have received money, haven't you, from the government to help with this?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we do registration drives all the time. Last weekend, we held 5 events over the 3 days. And the results from those cheek swabs that we took from people who registered to try and be donors have been sent to the labs, and they are already in the progress of being tested. And it's registration drives like that will help to encourage people to register, social media and word of mouth, people seeing this appeal now on London Tonight and hopefully registering themselves to see if they can help Brenda or someone else.
Beverly, as always, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
And as Beverly just mentioned, you can find more information on this story and how to donate on our website, itv.com/London. Still to come on the programme, unpicking the colourful fabrics in the story of the sari, and more than a pocketful of happiness when Richard E. Grant joins us live. But first, some of the capital's school children got a very different type of lesson today. Pupils from 3 schools were shown how to make prosthetic hands at the Excel this morning. It's a way to encourage young people to pursue careers in science. The Give a Hand project provides prosthetics for children in developing countries. Cafe Pater has more.
I feel like this is wrong, but I can't.
Using a hand to build a hand. Today, students across London have been given the task of assembling a prosthetic limb. Let's see how they're getting on.
We're just trying to push this circle thing into the thing so we can push it into there, because it isn't working. The transparent tube isn't going in properly.
It's a technical task, all aimed at inspiring children to get into robotics. And the work they're doing here will go a long way to helping others across the globe.
The end product is having a prosthetic arm and making it so we can ship it off to places in need for people who don't have arms for themselves.
Once they're done, the hands will be shipped to countries like India and Cambodia to help amputees carry out basic everyday activities.
So these hands are purely mechanical devices and can be used by someone who lost their arm or was born without an arm. And so effectively to help those amputees to have a better life, to be able to carry out tasks that they couldn't do otherwise.
A helping hand indeed, and after less than an hour, this lot managed to assemble a fully functioning prosthetic hand. And it's even capable of helping others write a few words.
This is the hand, so you can easily clench it like that. And then when you pull it, it releases these 2 prongs. This is the strap that Kira built, and Blanca built most of the hand. I just helped her out a bit. Yeah.
The hands are due to be shipped off to developing countries, and with them, a personalised message from their creators. Cafe Pater, ITV News, Excel Centre.
Next is the star of one of the greatest British films of all time and the author of a memoir that names everyone from King Charles to Nigella Lawson. The film is with Nell and I. The memoir is A Pocketful of Happiness and the actor is Richard E. Grant. Tonight he is on stage at the Richmond Theatre. Good evening to you, Richard. Thank you so much for waiting there for us. Tell us about this one-man show that you're doing this evening. You're talking about your life and your career, aren't you?
Yes, and it's based on a memoir that I published called A Pocket Full of Happiness, which is what my late wife charged my daughter and I to do 4 days before she died, to say try and find a pocket full of happiness in each day after my death. So that's what the memoir is based on, and the one-man show is the result of that.
It's been, what is it, a few years since your dear wife, Joan, passed. Do you feel her
18 months.
As you've done this, as you've gone through this process?
Yes. What the extraordinary thing is about bereavement and death is that most people do anything not to talk about it and to avoid the subject or to avoid mentioning the person that has died. So in doing this show and publishing a memoir, it's a way of keeping her very much alive and present in my conversation and with other people. So it's been amazingly cathartic and helpful.
What are the highlights that you talk about from your career? And I imagine there are plenty of laughs, aren't there?
Oh yeah. I've been following obsessively the career of Barbra Streisand since I was 12 years old in 1969. So that forms part of the show, and also the Oscar circuit that I was on 4 years ago for Can You Ever Forgive Me with Melissa McCarthy was an extraordinary, rags to riches kind of rakes progress through celebrity.
Didn't Joan work with Barbra Streisand on Yentl?
Yes, she did. It was the first film that Barbra Streisand had directed and produced, and it was the first film that Joan worked on. So she had a predominantly female crew on it as well back in 1982. So yes, our connections go back a long way.
I mean, that's the wonderful thing, isn't it? Because Joan had this fantastic career. For those who don't know, she was a voice coach, and she worked with Barbra Streisand, as we just mentioned, Vanessa Redgrave, Emma Stone. And she and you have spoken really honestly about shifting power dynamics in a relationship and what happens as people's successes change over the years. And actually, although you live this extraordinary life, that is something most couples can relate to, I suppose.
Yeah, well, when I first met her, she was the person that was the most successful in her career, always working with the top rank of actors. And I was a waiter in Covent Garden. And then subsequent to Withnail and I coming out in 1987, my career progressed at some speed, and I ended up being visibly, to the public, much more well known, whereas Joan remained, top of her profession but essentially backstage in the theatre. So she had to contend with people pushing her out of the way to get to me. So she found that very galling, understandably.
I can well imagine she did. I mentioned in my intro to you, Richard, the King helped when Joan was ill, and Nigella Lawson sent dinners round on a Sunday. What did you learn about people while Joan was ill and after her passing? What did it show you about people?
I think more than anything, you find out who your true friends are, and 99% were and have been extraordinarily compassionate, kind and considerate. And then there is that 1% that you will never forget, and in my case will never forgive, who literally fall off the cliff face and will cross the road rather than speak to you about it. So as far as I'm concerned, they're dead meat.
But is that really the case? People avoided you, Richard?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I know from being on social media that this is a very common occurrence when people are bereaved, that people will either do everything in their power not to talk about the person that has died, or just avoid you completely. Or people that you thought were great friends turn out not to be quite the friends that you thought that they were. But that's a tiny minority.
No, and you are talking about happiness. The memoir and the show is called A Pocket Full of Happiness, and it's made me very happy to speak to you. Richard E. Grant, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
The Lionesses' World Cup squad has been announced, and Arsenal and England's star striker Beth Mead is not in it. Mead was the top scorer in the Euros last year, but misses out after not recovering in time from a serious injury. She joins captain Leah Williamson and Chelsea's Fran Kirby on the sidelines. Head coach Serena Wiegman said they would have to take too many risks by having Mead on the team.
But she's so positive and she's going really well. But we said the time schedule she had, we would have taken so many risks to try and get her to the World Cup. And also she had a personal situation too, so that all added that very shortly or very early we said, well, we're not going to take that risk. I'm not willing to take that risk to push her too much and then she gets injured again.
Right, on to the weather. It's been a bit cool and overcast out there today, but what's it going to be like as we head very slowly towards the weekend? Here's Kerrie Gosney with the forecast.
ITV London weekday weather is sponsored by Octopus Electric Vehicles. Car, charger and energy.
Hello, very good evening to you. After a cloudy start this morning, the cloud lifting and thinning, giving us some brightness for the afternoon. Essentially, high pressure is in charge for another week ahead, so a lot of dry weather to come for the rest of the week and into the weekend. But yes, potentially some cloudy mornings, but feeling nice and warm and pleasant in the sunshine where we do get it, especially in the afternoon. And this was pretty much the case across the region today. After that cloudy start, the cloud thinning and breaking up and pushing northwards, so we saw increasing amounts of sunshine. So some bright spells to end daylight hours today, but the cloud is thickening and pushing back in from a northeasterly direction along a fairly light but fairly fresh northeasterly breeze overnight tonight. Could be a little bit of dampness out of any thicker cloud towards dawn, very similar compared to this morning, and lows of around 9 or 10 Celsius, so nothing too chilly overnight tonight. So don't be too disappointed with the cloudy start first thing in the morning. We're expecting that cloud to thin and burn back northwards a little bit more quickly than it did across the region today. So as we head into the afternoon, again in the sunny spells, highs of 20 or 21, that's 17 Fahrenheit, and just that light northeasterly breeze. We stick with the northeasterly flow over the next week ahead, a high UV sunburn risk, but a good dose of sunshine too.
ITV London weekday weather is sponsored by Octopus Electric Vehicles.
Hello, summer. Kerrie sponsors ITV Pollen Count.
Well, the grass pollen has really got going now, and it's high across most parts of the region over the next few days for the rest of the week and into the weekend. Take care, have a lovely evening. See you soon.
Finally tonight, the sari has been around for thousands of years. It was originally a humble item of clothing from northwest India, but over time expensive materials and vibrant colours have been woven in. At the Design Museum in Kensington, there's a new exhibition on this old favourite. Daniel Henry went to have a look.
Every sari has a story.
For many members of the South Asian diaspora in the UK, the sari is something they perhaps found in their grandmother's wardrobe, something that sparked curiosity, something we thought was very elegant and beautiful.
Now they have a stage. Some of these pieces have never been seen in this country before. Priya says they deserve a spotlight in the capital. Putting this exhibition together forced her to examine her own relationship with a garment she'd grown up with.
I have to admit that when I was growing up, I didn't necessarily relate to the sari, although I thought it was really elegant. And I loved watching my grandmother drape her sari. I didn't learn to drape a sari when I was growing up. But I think, you know, members of the diaspora here, we had quite a confusing relationship with our place of origin. But I think having lived in India, I was fortunate to live there 2015-16. And that, you know, made me much more confident about expressing my own Indian identity, but also understanding the sari in the way that it's worn today.
Sanjay agrees. His designs are modern, but he says the way they're seen is still trapped in the past.
The day we stop asking why they're wearing sari, then is the day the sari become as a normal garment. Like if I wear a trouser and a shirt, you don't ask, hey, what's happening, where are you going? But you do wear a sari, you associate something with it. To me, sari is not any different garment. It is not a costume. It's just a piece of clothes, you can drape it and drape it many hundred ways. And I think that's what this exhibition going to create, the awareness, you know.
The Offbeat Sari exhibition will show at the Design Museum until September. Daniel Henry, ITV News.
And that is it from us. The ITV Evening News is here next with Mary. But for now, from all of us on the London team, do have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.